Hello and welcome to The Lens with me, Sarah Travers. The Lens is a business in the community podcast in partnership with One Young World. I'm thrilled that our guests today come from opposite ends of the planet. Our first guest is Troy Douglas, founder of drinks company Nexba. The company is taking the world by storm and has already removed more than 5 billion grams of sugar from global diets. And it's just getting started. Our second guest is Taylor Quinn of Tailored Foods, whose ambition is to be a key catalyst in ending hunger by 2030 by building delicious, nutritious, low-cost food systems around the world. In this episode, we'll be exploring the world of responsible food and drink, how the ingredients we use or don't use impact the health and well-being of nations, how those living in areas of severe deprivation are benefiting from the work of our guests today, and we'll find out what's next in innovation in these sectors. To find out, let's get into the conversation. Troy, Taylor, welcome to The Lens. So folks, I'm so delighted that we could get you both on The Lens at the same time. That's been quite a challenge, as Troy, you're joining us from Australia, and Taylor, you're linking in from Canada. So let's start with finding out a little bit more about both of you. So Troy, could I start with you first of all, and can you share with us your story?
So my name's Troy Douglas. I'm the co-founder of Nexba. Effectively, we're a 12-year journey thus far. We were founded in 2010 with my brother-in-law, Drew Bilby. It's fair to say that both of us were very passionate about brand, about purpose, and wanting to make an impact with what we saw as the devil of the industry, which is sugar. And I think what we then saw over our journey in 12 years is a switch for multinationals moving to artificial ingredients, which is equally, if not worse, for the health and wellness of everybody that are consuming products. So we set on a mission very early as Nexba to rid the world of sugar and artificials, and we're underpinned by this a good sweet IP that allows us to create all natural, sugar-free and great tasting products.
Absolutely fascinating and brilliant that you've taken that idea and built such a successful business. So same question to you then, Taylor, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story.
My story starts back in 2015. I moved to Liberia in West Africa about 2/3 of the way through the Ebola outbreak. And I initially moved there to do a charity project, but after 6 months of learning and listening to the dynamics in Liberia, I came to appreciate that there was a huge gap in the market where families across Liberia wanted to feed their families healthy, nutritious food, but healthy, nutritious food was not available in local markets. Food prices were super high, so kids were dying of malnutrition. My background in social enterprise and academically, I'm a food anthropologist, so I began the long, slow, complex journey of asking the question and trying to answer, is it possible to design food products in a way that they can be super tasty and really fulfilling to what consumers want, but also radically affordable to the poorest of the poor? And so we're 6 years into that journey at Tailored Food, and we've done millions of meals at this point in not only Liberia, but other markets, where we, as Tailored Food, we partner with local enterprises, typically run by women, to design and take to market nutritious, delicious, low-cost food products.
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, Taylor. I just want to start with, your first statement that you said there, that you moved to Liberia during the Ebola crisis. Why? Were you not terrified? Most people would be staying away.
I was definitely a little terrified. Similar to Troy, I started this work, in my early 20s. And while I was a university student, I had read about, what was going on in West Africa with Ebola. But I thought what was happening was really sad and really intense. And I had always thought, while I was in university and following what was going on in West Africa, if I had an opportunity to spend time in that part of the world with my background in food anthropology and business, if I could do something to contribute to that part of the world, I wanted to try to do so.
Well, highly commendable, I suppose, for both of you. And thank you for the introductions. And, both terribly passionate about what you do and that responsible food production. Just tell us what makes your business or organization different and why are you so passionate about what you do? Troy.
When I reflect back, one of the things as a young 20-year-old and being fortunate to explore and visit places in Australia, different Indigenous communities, it was pretty shocking to see the products that are widely available, and what's cheap typically is what people consume, and taste is a big part of that. So it kind of really set us on a course of it's not right that we're leading and making products available and cheaply that are very negative from a health perspective. So it was about how do we make a brand and a product that tastes great and can be widely available. So we really set off on a mission to create naturally sugar-free. I think in terms of how we've built the business from just leaning into the industry, it was the fact that we set out to be first with being naturally sugar-free with our Good Sweet IP and leaning on amazing people in the industry. I guess that allowed us to collaborate with retailers about reinventing categories like soft drinks that are traditionally packed with sugar. So once we had that IP, we then started to really innovate collaboratively with partners in the same way that we've done in the UK with Sainsbury's, and really look at what are the categories causing the biggest health on impact from a consumption perspective. And obviously we began in the soft drinks, and now it's about scaling beyond that into other categories.
And how difficult was it when you got started? I mean, did you have an audience and were stakeholders receptive to, you know, your purpose, your vision, or was it a slow burner?
Yeah, I'd say the first 6 years as we were developing Good Sweet was a slow burner, and I was very comfortable at the being naive and young to reach out to incredible people to learn from their experience in the industry. And I think that allowed us to get traction. We imported a canning line we purchased on Alibaba into Australia, set up a factory. We had a whole warehouse filled with stock and not one customer. We thought that's just what you did. But clearly we then learnt that to scale, you need to really find the right partners to collaborate with to get products available and en masse. I think the fortunate thing for us is the concept of better for you, which is clearly such a big thing today, actually wasn't necessarily the case 12 years ago. Retailers would literally say verbatim, we believe in better for you, but we don't believe consumers are willing to kind of pay for that yet. And it's pretty funny to reflect how fast that's accelerated. It's an industry dominated by giants. So it's the best thing that we can do as a challenger brand is become as big as we can with naturally sugar-free, because what we see the future of every single category in the supermarket aisle should be is what's traditionally been packed with sugar products, and then it's emerged with diet, sugar-free, all this stuff that's good marketing terms for artificial should disappear.
And as you said there, Troy, you know, you're taking on these mega giant brands that, you know, we all know, and you are that challenger brand. How do you feel then when you actually see someone and they've chosen your brand over those big giants? How does that make you feel?
It makes you feel pretty awesome. We began a lot in schools as well in the early days, and ultimately the brand over 12 years has built a lot of advocates and parents that have kids with diabetes, all that type of stuff naturally lends itself to people who discover our product to help support it. I think what's fair to say in FMCG in the Australian market, it is really about delivering on quality of a product, getting availability on a shelf, because taste matters a lot from a repeat purchase perspective. So I think that's just supported us in getting scale, but it feels good. It's exciting to know that we're now launching, we'll be available in about 9 European markets. We're in the UK.
Yeah, how are you doing in the UK?
Yeah, really well. So we're available now in most of the majors. We're in Sainsbury's, Tesco, Morrison's. We've just got a couple more to tick off. But in our kombucha space, that's grown really strongly. And we're tackling a lot of the other categories like soft drinks.
Taylor, just bringing you in then on that sort of same point, the fact that we're looking at the challenges and the opportunities in the food and drink sector, and maybe in some of the countries that you're finding yourself working in, you know, there are different considerations than perhaps where Troy is working. But what makes your business or organization different? I think we've heard, and you've touched on it already, but why are you so passionate about what you do?
Our our business is kind of built on three kind of core truths that drive what we do. Our first kind of core insight was that moms everywhere want their kids to be healthy, but they are balancing a health goal with other goals around cost, around food that's convenient to prepare. Secondly, big food companies make huge profits selling unhealthy food to the poorest consumers around the world. Our experience working in some of the most complex markets is that people are often spending more money than consumers in the UK or Australia or the US when you look at their percentage of income. So, in the UK or the US, a family will spend about 10 to 15% of their income on food. Whereas in the markets we're working in, families are spending upwards of 65% of their income on food. And then, so the third core principle that makes us different is we believe that if you can find innovations in your value chain and how you're operating, you can actually make healthy food that's profitable to sell and allows you to scale a business in markets like Liberia or Mozambique or Ethiopia or wherever it might be. So that's kind of what makes us unique from a value perspective. And then we as Tailored Food position ourselves in the market not under our own brand. We're a bit of kind of the ghost partner behind a lot of amazing entrepreneurs who operate in the markets that we work in. So in Liberia, we've partnered now for 5 years with a business called Kawada Farm. Kawada Farm, before we got connected to them, they were a small little operation making sugarcane-based alcohol and selling raw cassava. Cassava is like a starchy potato, basically. So they were basically a small farming operation when we got involved with them. Together, we renovated a half-built hotel, turned it into a food production facility with $800 worth of equipment that we built at local motorcycle mechanic repair shops. And we used that $800 worth of kind of ragtag off-the-grid equipment to begin producing a fermented porridge product and launched that fermented porridge in the Liberian market. Even though we were selling nutritious fermented porridge, we decided to go to market aggressively. So we painted walls, we painted community centers, we gave out t-shirts, we worked with hip hop stars and comedians to host concerts in slum communities, we hosted football matches, all the same things that a big brand would do, but trying to activate consumers with grassroots marketing, not for kind of the typical products that you would see, but for super nutritious, low-cost porridge. So we have a network of technical advisors that we bring in from the US food industry and kind of from my global network of food industry contacts, depending on the project need.
Just, sorry if I can jump in, just hearing Taylor talk about multinationals pumping out of unhealthy food out to markets, and particularly in low economic environments, I think resonates strongly, because I think the food technology exists that should not be the case anymore. But the reality is something like naturally sugar-free and the good sweet that we use, when we began this journey, it was 4 times the cost of sugar as an example. So I think it's an important shift that needs to change. And what you're doing, Taylor, sounds amazing.
Yeah, and to add on to what Troy said, I think the really fascinating shift that I've seen in the world of food working in this space is that consumers genuinely are looking for healthier products. Historically, unhealthy products have been maybe marketed as healthy or have had marketing claims that connote some sense of health. Even those consumers in the bottom income quintiles are looking for products that will nourish them and their families. And so from a business perspective, I think it's the responsibility of the food industry to kind of meet that consumer desire while still performing, when it comes to taste and price and availability and shelf life and all of those core factors.
I'm sure everyone says they are a responsible food producer, but who's doing good things apart from you at the minute to make sure that these messages are reaching the places that they need to?
Well, I think all artificial sweeteners should be out of use. So they should be removed from products and replaced with naturally sugar-free alternatives that aren't causing negative health implications. So I think there needs to be a greater focus, is rather than have that kind of VAT exemption in the UK as an example, they should be doing that for products that are actually being naturally sugar-free. So rather than simply have a tax on sugar, you should actually be encouraging the acceleration of food and beverages that are ticking the boxes from a health perspective.
So which countries are doing it well?
I think every country can do it better. I think, to Taylor's point, I think there is a rising consumer awareness, and COVID really accelerated it for better for you products. I think more recently, though, the challenging with economic environment means that typically people will forgive better for you products, which can be largely more expensive, and they're going to be spending their money on, unfortunately, the unhealthy products. So I think this environment right now is quite challenging from a health perspective.
So if we say compare it to the tobacco industry, where any, tobacco now in the UK is sold, and when the packaging is very much showing the harm that smoking can do you think that food labeling needs to be better on this, Taylor?
The tobacco industry comparison is a good one, and it's a small step, but there's a number of Latin American countries that are actually doing really interesting things when it comes to consumer labeling. And so in countries like Chile, and more recently in countries like Mexico, there's warning labels that have been put on food products that are high in sugar or salt or fat. And so that's a new kind of growing trend where, similar to a pack of cigarettes, there will actually be a pretty unappealing warning logo.
Taylor, if I could just stick with you for the minute, because I'm fascinated by what I found on the website, that you conduct your anthropological research by ultra running through the countries that you work in. Right. Talk me through ultra running.
When in a vehicle, getting in a car, driving to a place, getting out, I find that's often not the most effective way to really try to understand a food landscape and figure out what are the insights that are really driving a community's food system. And so even when I'm involved in a project with a partner like the United Nations, after I'm finished with my hosts, I will always put on my running shoes and go out on my own and get lost running through whatever city or community that I'm in, and find myself in people's homes or deep in a market talking to a market vendor about their profit margins, or running the entire west coast of Rwanda to track how pricing is different in urban versus rural settings. For me, I find that running is the best form in which, with a lot of stopping involved, is the best form in which to really try to get a pulse of what community eats. But yeah, I really enjoy coming from this work as an anthropologist, as deeply as I can integrate myself into the communities that I'm operating in. And I find getting out of a vehicle and being able to wander through market stalls and things like that is the best approach for me.
I just love, I'm imagining, Taylor, you doing that. And I'm like, practically, are you laptopless? Or are you just always carrying your running stuff? I'd love to.
Yeah. So
paint the picture for us, Taylor.
Sure. Yeah. So generally, I'm always carrying my running shoes whenever I go to a new place. And I find, for better or worse, conducting research in our modern world, even in some of the most kind of rural communities that I'm working in. So I find actually a phone versus a laptop or any form of clipboard is kind of the least invasive way to record insights and record notes. And then if I get back to wherever I'm staying later that day or a few days later, I'll kind of turn those into more robust insights.
So are you a bit of a cult figure in these places? Do people? I'm imagining a bit of a Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
You attract all these people and think, there's the running man.
People often assume something's wrong. It's not super common that maybe a person who looks pretty foreign to their community is running through their community. So I do get some strange looks, but mostly people who are just genuinely excited to see that I'm jogging in their community and feel safe to spend time doing exercise in their community. Whenever I go into a new project, I'm often told at a high level, hey, here's kind of like the big market categories, but really looking at what people are eating, often like on the side of the road, where the opportunities are between modern consumerism and traditional food products that people love. Finding those opportunities and those intersections is kind of always the focus of my wanderings in markets. Looking at food products that maybe have been made in traditional ways, so there's capacity and knowledge to produce at a local level, and how do you kind of redesign those traditional product forms in order to produce at scale, but also produce more nutritiously.
So Troy, how do you do your research then?
Having not come from the industry in the beginning, I think one of the best ways to learn and grow is through conversation and tapping into the experiences of people that have lived and have a lot more experience than I necessarily had in certain areas of business. And how do you scale impact and accelerate making an impact, but do it in a way that you need to be a business that can be profitable. And I think meeting other founders is always energizing. Everyone's got incredible stories and learnings. I think one thing that we've been supported by as a business is we've become custodians of shareholders with people that have done amazing things in business, and they genuinely believe in our mission of ridding the world of sugar and artificials. So you feel this responsibility to continually make an impact and to scale. And their stories help. Ultimately, as a founder, you need to back your decisions and own your decisions. But I think it's always incredibly important to be open to receiving information that could challenge your thinking. I think that ultimately will mean that you've got a better business. And I think everybody that is in our team, I think everyone's genuinely passionate about what we do, which is incredibly helpful and supportive of where we're going. And I think more recently, in the last 2 years, as a business, it used to be about just driving growth, whereas today it needs to be obviously very sustainable to make an impact. So our next phase of what we recognize is through, personally, I've spent 2 years chatting to big private equity, big multinationals. There's no better platform to build than yourself in terms of the Nexba evolving to the Good Sweet Group, and as founders, actually bringing founders into that platform, leveraging that platform to then support how do you accelerate distribution and synergies through manufacturing. So that's kind of the focus for us in this next phase.
And Troy, you're also part of the Young Presidents Association, I believe, a global group of young CEOs. Love to find out a bit more about that and how important you find this in terms of leadership, learning to be a good, responsible leader, that networking and the sharing of the knowledge.
It's been incredibly important. So YPO, Young Presidents Organisation, it'd be remiss of me not to share, but one of our, as I kind of referenced before, a secret to us as a business scaling has always been to surround ourselves with great expertise. And so when we were launching to the UK, having not been there before, we kind of built these champions, people in different industries to be advisors. And I think what's powerful about having a group of people, can be anything. It can be, you can set up your own group with friends or people that you meet, is ultimately creating a safe environment to share experiences. I think the reality is you don't need to be a founder to feel isolated. So I think just leaning into conversations is a healthier and more enjoyable way to live.
And Taylor had been talking there about finding and working with ambitious entrepreneurs to develop his products. Is that the same for you, Troy? How do you find the people with the big ideas? Maybe those people who you align your thinking to, or those people, as you said, who challenge you, but ultimately they're making important contributions to the thinking around the business.
Yeah, absolutely. The ethos for the Good Sweet Group is effectively surrounding and joining forces with brands that taste good and do good. And I think that the power of evolving to a group that takes away a brand like Nexba, which is all consumer facing, is in a way, how do you remove the ego of founders to create a platform where everyone can genuinely just be there to focus on scaling the brands that we all believe in, that should be more widely available to have an impact.
Taylor, would you like to come in there on the importance of having or belonging to a network or surrounding yourself with the right people?
My experience has been that it's few and far between to find fellow people working at the intersection of wanting to build really exciting businesses and wanting to genuinely create social impact. When you find fellow dreamers and doers and operators who really exist at the intersection between social impact and the food industry. I get really excited and have a lot of time and capacity to connect with others and to learn. I'm still pretty young, so try to learn as much as I can from those at that intersection. But also now I'm trying to do as much as I can to dedicate a good chunk of my time to mentoring the next generation and sharing the learnings I've had growing tailored food over the last 6 years.
Oh, I'm sure you would really help. Both of you would really help those coming behind. So what are the next innovations coming down the line for both your organizations? What do you want to do next, Troy?
Yeah, well, I'm literally living and breathing my life with our structural evolution to the Good Sweet group. That really, the drivers underpinning that is kind of focused on that brand platform, distribution aspects, and then manufacturing from a long-term scale. And I think in this environment more than ever, it's taking control and being able to have control as a founder of how you drive growth and attract the right people to be on the bus and on the journey to widely make products available. So obviously at the Nexba brand level, it is really, we're in that phase of scaling beyond the markets are already in. And beyond that, I think there is a nice environment of putting arms around smaller, passionate brands in a way that can help their businesses grow in what can be challenging environments is kind of, I think, going to be the most rewarding thing that we can work on in the years ahead.
And tell me a little bit about kombucha. Is that how you say it? I know one of your products is becoming more and more popular. What is it and why is it so good for people?
Kombucha and I guess functional products in general, we spent years to actually add in Bacillus coagulans, which is like a fortified probiotic that can survive different temperatures, and it really gets activated when it hits the warmth of your gut. So in Australia, we're one of the only brands that can actually say promotes good gut health, having had that kind of proper science testing. But kombucha is just a delicious fermented tea effectively. And what is unique to our brand is because of our Good Sweet, we focus on making it taste appealing like a traditional soft drink.
Yeah, the taste is very important, isn't it? Taylor, same question to you. What are the next innovations coming down the line for Tailored Foods and you?
We've spent the last couple of years really focused on taking our initial success and trying to see if the business model was also going to be true in other markets. Was there opportunities to profitably sell super nutritious food to the lowest income consumers? And so now we've proven that out in 5 markets, that model. So what's next for us is really taking our learnings and trying to better share those with the food industry, with the nonprofit industry, and kind of with the world at large. We're putting together a documentary film as well as sharing more lessons learned with food companies looking to operate in the markets we're operating in. We're big believers that no food company is bad or evil. And the people who run big food companies are inherently good people who are just existing in a bad system. Good people in bad systems, at the end of the day, want to do good things if you can prove that a better system is possible.
Love it, Taylor. I wonder, do either of you have a question for each other?
Just as you're talking, what do you say is the issue of the systems from a big manufacturer perspective?
I think the fundamental issue is that it is most often the case that the unhealthy ingredient is slightly cheaper than the healthy ingredient. So from a food manufacturer perspective, if you're only looking at economics, you're probably going to choose that unhealthier ingredient. And I think it's kind of a 2-prong approach that can solve it. It's like partially it's policy and partially trying to build the business case. And that's my goal, is to try to build the evidence base that even low-income consumers are intentionally choosing healthier products and taking that evidence to category leaders in order to show them that, hey, like this is not just a fad. It is where the market's going.
And Taylor, are you trying to help fund some of these entrepreneurs in these countries? Like, do you help give access to funding? Because I think ethical finance and funding could go a long way in trying to change the structure of how businesses are set up to operate.
I most definitely agree with you. The funding and the funding to really scale a business to a point where you can compete against, the big players in whatever market you're operating in, that can be a real challenge. And so we'll give small grants, but then we'll help our partners either raise non-diluted grant capital or sometimes investment capital, depending on the partner and depending on the market.
Yeah, awesome.
Taylor, do you have a question for Troy?
Yeah, very quickly, Troy. Taking this methodology of consumers want healthier products, and in a category like soft drinks that traditionally has been extremely unhealthy, and how has the experience been communicating to consumers that this category that historically has been so unhealthy actually can be different?
Yeah, certain markets require greater education and investment in marketing to help educate. In a country like Australia, it really stems down to physical availability. And I think the benefit of being able to have a conversation with decision makers to get distribution and ranging of a product, it's very easy to help a buyer understand that naturally sugar-free should be the solve for giving presence within a category in a fridge or in the supermarket shelf. There's a lot of data out there in terms of 20% of people know they want something in that space, but not sure what. So that kind of, you're always going to attract that kind of an, and then if the product is delivered in a way and you can build a bit of narrative onto the product, then that's kind of where you can build that advocacy in an organic way without needing to spend large.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably the best way to educate, because we're not a business that is had the ability in the past to invest serious cash into marketing and education. It has really been through PR and advocacy and tapping into networks of communities.
Gents, it's been an absolute joy talking to you today, a real eye-opener. Thank you so much to Troy Douglas, founder of drinks company Nexba, and to Taylor Quinn of Tailored Foods. You've been listening to The Lens with me, Sarah Travers. If your business is keen to innovate responsibly, if you want to learn from others, or if you want to understand how your business can go faster, braver, and bolder in its responsible decision-making, then get in touch with Business in the Community at www.bitc.org.uk. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time.